Welcome back. I'm Luna with the International School of Forecasting. In episode 3, we broke down the mathematical problems with 13-month calendar claims. Today, we're tackling something even more important: the health and biological claims. You've probably heard people say that using a 13-month calendar would improve your health, reconnect you with natural rhythms, align your body with cosmic cycles, or even cure sleep disorders and hormonal imbalances. These are bold claims. Let's see what the evidence actually shows. Let's start with the most common claim. The menstrual cycle is 28 days, therefore a 28-day calendar is natural and aligned with human biology. Here's what's true. The average menstrual cycle length across the population is about 28 to 29 days. The average synodic lunar cycle, new moon to new moon, is 29.53 days. These are similar numbers, and that is interesting. But here's what's also true. Normal menstrual cycle length ranges from 21 to 35 days. Both extremes are medically normal. Most women don't have exactly 28-day cycles. Many have cycles that vary by several days from month to month. If you have a 32-day cycle, is that unnatural because it doesn't match the 28-day calendar? Of course not. If you have a 25-day cycle, does that mean you're out of sync with nature? No. The 28-day figure is a statistical average across a diverse population. It's not a universal constant that every person's body follows. Treating it as a cosmic requirement that we should align our calendar to is biologizing what's actually just an average. Some research has investigated whether menstrual cycles synchronize with lunar phases. The results are mixed and generally show weak effects at best. Some studies from the 1980s and 1990s found slight statistical correlations between moon phases and menstrual cycle timing in some populations. More recent studies using larger data sets have found little to no consistent synchronization. A 2021 study published in Science Advances found that younger women and women with longer cycles showed some entrainment to lunar cycles, but the effect was small and inconsistent. The researchers concluded that while there may be a weak biological connection between lunar cycles and menstrual cycles, that doesn't mean using a 28-day calendar provides any benefit. The calendar is an abstract counting system. It doesn't change the moon. It doesn't change your hormones. It's just a way of numbering days. If you want to track your cycle in relation to lunar phases, the effective approach is to observe the actual moon, not to use an arbitrary calendar system that drifts 20 days away from real lunar phases within a single year. There is evidence that lunar cycles can affect sleep patterns. Several studies have found that people sleep slightly less and report lower sleep quality around the time of the full moon. The effect is small, maybe 20 minutes less sleep on average, but measurable. The mechanism probably involves light exposure. The full moon provides more nighttime illumination, which can suppress melatonin production and disrupt circadian rhythms. This effect was likely stronger for our ancestors who lived without artificial lighting. But again, this is about the actual moon in the sky, not about calendar systems. Using a 28-day calendar doesn't change whether there's a full moon tonight. It doesn't change how much moonlight reaches your bedroom window. The calendar is just a counting tool. If you want to improve sleep in relation to lunar phases, the approach is to observe actual moon phases and adjust light exposure accordingly. Use blackout curtains during full moons. Reduce artificial light exposure at night. These are practical interventions. Changing your calendar system does nothing. Seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, is a real condition where people experience depression during winter months when daylight is reduced. This affects real people with real symptoms. Some calendar system advocates claim that SAD is caused or worsened by our disconnection from natural time, and that adopting a different calendar would help. This doesn't make sense. SAD is caused by reduced light exposure, which affects circadian rhythms and serotonin production. The mechanism is well understood. It's about photons hitting your retina, not about which number you write on a piece of paper to mark the date. The effective treatments for SAD are light therapy, vitamin D supplementation, and sometimes medication or therapy. These address the actual biological mechanisms. Changing your calendar system addresses nothing. Here's something that is true. Modern life disrupts natural biological rhythms in significant ways. Artificial lighting, irregular sleep schedules, shift work, screen time before bed, jet lag, all of these genuinely affect health. Circadian rhythm disruption is linked to sleep disorders, mood disorders, metabolic problems, and more. This is a real issue, but it's not caused by calendar systems. It's caused by behavior and environment. You could use the Gregorian calendar, the Julian calendar, a 13-month calendar, or the Hebrew calendar, and your circadian rhythms would be equally disrupted if you're staying up until 2 a.m. staring at a bright screen. Conversely, you could use any calendar system and have healthy circadian rhythms if you maintain consistent sleep schedules, get morning sunlight exposure, and minimize artificial light at night. The calendar system is irrelevant to circadian health. Behavior and light exposure are what matter. Let's revisit the claim that the number 13 was deliberately suppressed to hide knowledge about natural calendars. It's true that 13 is considered unlucky in many Western cultures. Triskaidekaphobia, the fear of the number 13, is real. Buildings skip the 13th floor. Airlines sometimes skip row 13, and Friday the 13th is considered unlucky. But the origins of this superstition are complex and varied. Some trace it to Norse mythology, where 13 guests at a feast in Valhalla led to the death of the god Balder. Some connect it to Christian tradition, where 13 people were present at the Last Supper before Judas betrayed Jesus. Some point to the Knights Templar being arrested on Friday the 13th in 1307. These are cultural narratives that evolved over centuries. They're folklore, not organized suppression campaigns. And here's what's important. Many cultures don't consider 13 unlucky. In Mesoamerican traditions, particularly Mayan and Aztec, 13 was sacred. The Mayan calendar included a 13-day cycle called the trecena, which was central to their timekeeping and cosmology. 13 represented the levels of heaven. In Chinese culture, 13 is generally neutral. It's not considered particularly lucky or unlucky. In Italian culture, 13 is sometimes lucky. The idea that 13 is universally suppressed or demonized is false. It's a Western-centric assumption that ignores the diversity of global cultures. Some videos claim that the Catholic Church deliberately suppressed 13-month calendars to disconnect people from natural and feminine cycles. Let's examine this. The Gregorian calendar reform of 1582 was about correcting accumulated drift in the Julian calendar to fix the date of Easter. The Church wanted Easter to fall on the correct date, according to their formula, which depends on the vernal equinox and the lunar cycle. This is documented. The papal bull explains the reasoning clearly. There's no evidence that Pope Gregory or the Church was trying to suppress a 13-month system. The Julian calendar they were refining was already a 12-month system that Julius Caesar had implemented 1,600 years earlier. The Church wasn't inventing a new structure. They were fixing drift in an existing structure. If the Church wanted to suppress natural or lunar calendars, they did a very bad job because many cultures within Christian regions continued to use lunisolar calendars alongside the civil calendar. The Hebrew calendar, which adds a 13th month in 7 out of every 19 years, has been in continuous use throughout the Christian era. The Church never suppressed it. The idea of a conspiracy to suppress 13-month calendars reads modern anxieties about control and manipulation back into history. It's not supported by evidence. We talked about this in episode 3, but it's worth revisiting in the context of health claims. When the International Fixed Calendar was proposed in the 1920s and debated by the League of Nations in the 1930s, proponents argued for it on practical grounds: simplified accounting, consistent work weeks, easier financial planning. These are utilitarian arguments. Nobody at the time claimed it would improve health or reconnect people with natural cycles. Those claims are modern inventions by calendar myth promoters. The calendar failed because of religious objections, particularly from Jewish communities who couldn't accept breaking the continuous 7-day Sabbath cycle, and because the practical benefits didn't outweigh the enormous cost and disruption of switching. If the calendar had genuine health benefits, that would have been a powerful argument in its favor. But nobody made that argument because there was no evidence for it. Let's be clear about what genuinely affects health in relation to time and cycles. Light exposure. Getting morning sunlight and avoiding artificial light at night improves circadian rhythms, sleep quality, and mood. Sleep consistency. Going to bed and waking up at consistent times improves sleep quality and metabolic health. Seasonal awareness. Being aware of seasonal changes and adjusting activity levels accordingly can help with mood and energy. Stress management. Chronic stress disrupts virtually every bodily system. Managing stress through whatever practices work for you improves health. Social rhythms. Having consistent social activities and connection improves mental and physical health. Notice what's not on this list. Which calendar system you use. Now, here's where I want to be fair. Observing the actual moon and paying attention to its phases can be a meaningful practice, not because the moon magically controls your body, but because it's a way of connecting with natural cycles and creating mindfulness practices. If tracking the full moon reminds you to get outside and look at the night sky, that's beneficial. If marking lunar phases creates a rhythm in your month that helps you reflect and set intentions, that's valuable. If observing the moon helps you feel more connected to something larger than your daily routine, that supports well-being. But these benefits come from the practice of attention and observation, not from the calendar system you use to number your days. You can observe the moon while using the Gregorian calendar, the Hebrew calendar, or any other system. The calendar is the tool, the moon is the phenomenon. Don't confuse the two. There is zero scientific evidence that using a 13-month, 28-day calendar provides health benefits compared to using the Gregorian calendar. There is weak and inconsistent evidence for biological connections between lunar cycles and human biology, primarily related to sleep and possibly menstrual cycles. There is strong evidence that modern life disrupts natural biological rhythms through artificial light, irregular schedules, and chronic stress. If you want to improve your health in relation to natural cycles, observe the actual moon and adjust light exposure accordingly. Maintain consistent sleep and wake times. Get morning sunlight exposure. Reduce artificial light at night, especially blue light. Pay attention to seasonal changes and adjust activity levels. Create rhythms and rituals that feel meaningful to you. Changing which number you write on a piece of paper to mark the date accomplishes none of these things. In episode 5, our final episode, we're going to zoom out and look at the big picture, why the Gregorian calendar became the global standard, what that tells us about power and history, and how to think about multiple calendar systems simultaneously. Thanks for listening. I'm Luna, and I'll see you in episode 5.